Imagine waking up to a complete regional failure where all your critical business data is suddenly unreachable. It sounds terrifying, but in reality, many businesses face if they are not prepared. Luckily, with Azure's powerful storage options, you can safeguard your data, ensuring it's always accessible, even in the worst case scenarios. In this video, our cloud expert will break down the key Azure storage redundancy solutions like LRS for cost-effective protection to RA-GRS for full global redundancy. Stick around to discover how to choose the best strategy for your needs and ensure your data is never lost, no matter what happens. And if you want to dive deeper into Azure, don't miss the end for this video with a detail on how to register for our free class.
And there are like 4 different standard redundancy mechanisms are given. Okay, so here if I am talking about, we have LRS, which is called out as locally redundant storage. We have ZRS, that's your zone redundant storage. We do have GRS, which is geo-redundant storage, and last but not least RAGRS, which is read access geo redundant storage. There are 2 more. Right now, I'll talk about first these 4, and then remaining 2 more we will talk about it. What all the options Microsoft is offering over here. Now, when we are talking about this redundancy, we always look for 2 type of redundancy in terms of data storage, right? So redundancy is more about 2 type of redundancy we can consider. One is at region level, which is regional, and probably you can call it out as in global or multi-region. So here we do have the 4 different kind of redundancy mechanism provided by Microsoft Azure. So here LRS is there, or we have this ZRS. These both redundancy belongs to your region base, whereas we have this GRS and RA-GRS. Okay, so they are basically considered as in global or multi-region redundancy as a part of the offerings. So here what we need to do when we are planning to go through with any redundancy kind of activity, right? We always expect that whatever the data gets stored in my standard storage services, we are expecting that these informations basically like help you out in terms of storing and retrieving your particular data at global locations, or maybe you may have some disaster recovery, you may have some particular availability of your data in case of any outage occurs, then you should be able to recover or restore your particular data back into the system, right? So there are some of the standard objective we do have. So in that particular process, the overall approach, or maybe you can say overall activity, what we are planning to get over here is that the Azure basically provide you that features in place. It will give you the option that, hey, if you want to plan and manage your data, let's say from the compliance point of view, you have a requirement, then you can store in your region. If there is no compliance requirement, you have business critical applications spread across the geography, and then you are expecting redundancy across the locations. You want to restore your data back into the environment and all that scenario, you may go ahead with this global or multi-region redundancy as well. So here, if I'm considering like regional and this option, then how it looks like. So, for example, if I go ahead with my LRS, so in LRS, Microsoft is providing you a kind of standard data store where they manage 3 copy of your data, 1 primary and 2 secondary. So, I mean, in Portal, you will not be able to see this illustration. It is just that for understanding, I am talking about. If you read that Microsoft documentations and all of that, so they will show you, or there's written that how they take care of that redundancy and all. So here, when we go through with this particular redundancy, it will basically provide you a kind of three copies of data within single facility. So when they say facility, so facility is basically nothing but it's your data center only, okay? Within single facility and single region. Okay, so the data gets stored somewhere into single facility, single region. The You can say pros and cons kind of. So the advantage of LRS is basically it will help you out in terms of protect data, protect data against the failure of network, disk, right? And majorly like or and server rack probably. It is best suitable for compliance, right? So you may have any data compliances and all that. The LRS basically best suitable. Data gets replicated across the objects, whatever we have, or three replica, whatever they make. So it will be using, Microsoft is using their backbone network to transfer your data from different devices or different location within the same data center. So the data transfer will be faster. You can have restoration will be also faster, and the cost will be lower compared to other redundancy options, right? So the reason behind that is the lower cost is basically provided in a way that whatever the data you're gonna store in that local redundancy or in that particular data center or in that under the single region, data is not going outside. So dumping of data is free in any particular redundancy you consider. Okay, LRS, ZRS, GRS. Dumping data in cloud is absolutely free. But when you perform transaction, when I say transaction, it will be in and out, or people call it out ingress and egress and read write and all that, right? So different term maybe we can use it. So when you are particular storing data, the cost will be lower comparative to other redundancy like ZRS, GRS, RA-GRS. I'll tell you why in this upcoming explanation. And the data replication when it's happen, it will be always async operation. Okay. So whatever data you replicate across the copy, it will be asynchronous process. So I hope everybody familiar with async. If not, just give you a high level definition. So async is like or asynchronous is more about like three copy of data you have. All three copy of data should have same information. If is there any discrepancy, like let's say you have performed write operation and write operation initiated on primary store or primary data, remaining two secondary also, unless and until they don't finish that same data to be written, there will be no confirmation will be available. So in that particular case, the data will get stored into the same data center, different disk, different location, different power, different network, different storage. That's how it will make sure that they will provide you a kind of advantage that data gets stored under the same location. Now, disadvantage over here. Imagine that whole facility goes down or whole data center goes down, then you will lose the connectivity of that particular data. So that's the reason I have mentioned that if you have compliance requirement, you cannot move your data outside of your region or location, then best suitable is the LRS. Of course, I mean, you can consider lower cost and all that stuff, but let's say you have business critical applications, you might have to replicate data across the location, then definitely you can think about better SLA and better redundancy for your data. So then you can think of like better scope of redundancy. So in that case, one more scope of redundancy we can think of ZRS. So ZRS stands for Zone Redundant Storage. Now in ZRS, what will happen? So it will be, you may have availability zones, right? So ZRS by name, it you can make it out that zone is basically nothing but availability zone. So here it will be 3 copies of data within single region and more than one facility. So in case when you are hosting the storage and all that, and you decide that, hey, I want to go ahead with 3 replica. So here we have the options where you can think of that in case of planning and working with your data store. So the data gets replicated across the availability zones. 1 copy, probably if you have 3 availability zones in that location, then Microsoft will copy 3 copy of data, one each in respective availability zones. Protects against failure of network, disk, server rack and all that thing included, and zone level. Okay, so this include, like, if single data center goes down, then remaining 2 data center basically help you out in terms of restoring your data back. It will automatically make one of the copy of data as primary, and then it will basically help you out in terms of managing your data operations and all. Now here I will say, okay, compliance and all that thing is perfectly fine. Redundancy also will not work. The good thing is that the asynchronous operation will be there because it is still in the same region. So the copy will be asynchronous, and then data will be like the operation will make sure that the copy will be updated and you will be able to restore your data in case of any outage occurs. Now imagine that if whole availability zone and everything is fine. I mean, if individual availability zone goes down, then it's perfectly fine. But what if my whole region goes down? Then in that case, you may lose this particular option. So here what Microsoft did, they later introduced, okay, I mean, if you have zone dependency also, then we will help you out with another feature of GRS. So what does GRS looks like? Here you will get one primary and another one as in secondary. Okay. And this data operation between primary to secondary, sorry, my bad. This should be sync. I mean, I was talking sync, but it was like this one should be asynchronous. Synchronous, like the copy of the data will be in sync, all 3 copy. Sorry, I am just rephrasing what I said. And asynchronous is like basically over the time it will write the data from primary to secondary. Now here it will protect all these particular stuff. Along with this, here maybe you can say region level failure. So here it will be total 6 copies of data across 2 regions, right? And it will help you out in terms of protecting your particular information across these locations what we have. So we need to plan, or we need to identify that in case of whatever data we are like storing and all, and by default, the secondary location, whatever we have, that particular location no longer will be accessible. It will be only for, it's like a kind of data dumping zone. Whatever data you are storing, it will get dumped into primary, and secondary only comes into picture if your primary goes down, or if you want to test failover scenario in terms of primary to secondary. So earlier, in fact, that failover testing scenario was also not available. In fact, Microsoft was only controlling this particular part, that in case primary goes down, then Microsoft will decide to fail over into secondary. So later stage, like many organization or maybe enterprises raised that concern that, hey, due to our audit and compliance mechanism, we need to submit the report that, okay, this storage actually replicates data, or maybe you can say data replication is happening, but actually when failover happens or any particular disaster occurs, then the failover occurs and then it will start reading data from that secondary location as well. So initially, Microsoft was not offering that particular feature, but later stage they added this feature that you can go and validate and test your particular failover. So whatever data you store in your primary, it will be available asynchronously in secondary. Now, when I say asynchronous, so asynchronous is more about like, so sync is like all copy of data like aligned with the same format, whereas async is like always the other way, that primary region or base region have latest data updated and secondary region may get updated over the time. Now you may ask the question that, hey, then how much time it will take my data to asynchronously replicate from primary to secondary? So the answer to that question is like it depends. There is no fixed time given by Microsoft also even in their portal or in their SLA that okay, we will replicate within 0 second or 0.1 second or 0.2 second or whatever. I mean, so that time frame is not mentioned in that SLA. It was more depend on the data size and all that. If you uploaded like 10 GB of file into the blob, then it may take some time to replicate your data from primary to secondary as well. So it's over the time. And in that particular case, the secondary region, if you have like stored something in primary region and something went wrong and your primary region goes down, then in that case, maybe the secondary region is basically, you can say, only available or only you can say like comes into picture when the primary completely not pay, I mean, accessible or something like that. So in that scenario, uh, what we can plan, or maybe you can imagine like another scenario use case that failover is fine. Let's say I have a business unit. One is basically more on the application front where the data is getting written in my primary application or primary location. And secondary location, I have analytics team sitting. Now, primary region is basically performing read-write operation from the same storage and all that. So maybe there will be a read-write operation threshold might be going on. And let's imagine that I have another analytics team who is supposed to read that data for performing the analytics on top of it. And in that case, I don't want that the read request also throttle my storage and minimize the performance of my application or my storage and all that stuff. So I wanted like only read operation. Okay, go to the secondary location, read your data and perform your particular task, right? It may be possible that there might be a slight delay between primary to secondary replica, but I'm fine with that because at the end, I just wanted to do some analysis and make some particular data operation performance to be get going. So in that case, the GRS basically option may not be like feasible. So in that scenario, you may think about RA-GRS. All features, GRS plus read access from secondary location. Okay, so it will provide you a kind of, and it will also offer you a separate endpoint. So it will provide you a kind of option where you can read the data from that secondary region. It will provide you that particular read operations to be available from that particular secondary location with separate endpoint URL. And in your application, you will get to know that how much time it is taking, what data gets replicated, and all that stuff. And then accordingly, probably you can use them in your operations or in your business application, whatever you have. Here, Microsoft uses region pairing concept. So here, Microsoft is using region pairing concepts between primary and secondary region selection. So whatever you select as a primary, you do not have scope to change your secondary because I mean that's what the service offering, right? I mean, if you want to customize and you want to do it, you can do it manually. I mean, you want like, okay, East US is my primary, and then let's say East Asia should be secondary probably. Then that feature is not available by my provided by Microsoft. It is you have to configure it and you have to design that SLA that how much time it will take and all that particular stuff. You may have to set up another network connection between your East US versus the East Asia or something like that, and then probably you replicate your data. In that case, Microsoft will not give any SLA. SLA will be provided for your primary region to secondary region, and in that particular case, you may have the data replication basically happening between those two particular locations. So East US, West US, or West US, East US. Similarly, Microsoft has given complete laundry list about their region pairing, that what all the regions get paired with each other, and in case you want to replicate your data, looking at your business location, maybe you can consider one region as in primary, and then second probably you can define. So it is completely up to us that what is the objective we wanted to target, and in that particular case, you may simply go ahead with those replication mechanism as a part of it. Now, along with this, later stage, what Microsoft did, they came up with another offering, say similar to GRS and RA-GRS. They came up with GZRS, okay, that is Geo-Zone Redundant Storage, and they added RA-GZRS as well. Okay, so the advantage is same. The GRS and ZRS, whatever the advantage they are offering, the feature will be same. The advantage over here is that it will include one copy of data going outside of that region. So in case the whole region goes down, you still have a option to restore your data back into your particular primary location, or maybe you can access your data from the secondary location, and that way you can perform your particular read write operations throughout this particular storage, what we are like looking at it. So while configuring your like storage options, now let's say for example, if you're planning for certification also, right? So I'll add a couple of information about certification part as well. So there are two different type of certifications definitely we can target. I mean, that developer or infra associate level, and second one is architect level. So if you go ahead with this developer or infra level, then there might be a question coming from configuration side, that I mean, if what type of configurations probably you can plan and what access level and all that stuff. When it comes to architecture side, the designing questions may come, and in that they might ask you this particular features, that if you're planning to design or you're planning to recommend a kind of storage capacity to your customer, which particular replication mechanism you can basically recommend during the solutioning or something, right? So LRS, GRS, ZRS, and all that particular stuff. So it will be always a kind of approach, or maybe you can say you need to identify that in case of planning and providing any solution to your customer, probably identifying right replication mechanism will give you better redundancy towards your storage, and then you can plan your particular overall environment.
Well, that was our expert, and thank you so much for staying with us till the end of the video. Now all you have to do is just click the link in the description below, or if you are just starting out, just type k21academy.com/azure02. Now all you have to do is just enter name, enter email ID, enter phone number, and click on register now, and you will be redirected to this page. You can also add this to your Google Calendar or Apple Calendar, and I promise this is something that you don't want to miss. So go ahead, click on the link and step into the world where learning knows no boundaries. Till then, keep enjoying. I'll see you in the next video.